You've probably heard that most of the internet is hidden from view, that what we see on the surface is just a tiny fraction of what's really out there. But what's actually lurking in those hidden corners? Below the surface is the deep web, and deeper still is the dark web, a place where total anonymity can unleash the absolute worst of humanity. I want to start by saying I'm not someone who goes looking for trouble. I'm a graphic designer, I work from home, I drink too much coffee, and at the time this happened, I was going through a pretty bad breakup. That's the context. That's why I had too much time and not enough good judgment. A friend, and I use that word loosely now, told me about the dark web the way people talk about a bar they'd been to. Casual, like it wasn't a big deal. He said most of it was boring. Conspiracy forums, drug markets that were mostly scams. He said, you go in, you look around, you come back. It's like a zoo. So one night around 2 a.m., I downloaded Tor and went in. He was right that most of it was underwhelming. I spent maybe an hour clicking around on dead links and weird forums before I stumbled onto a marketplace. It looked almost normal, like a stripped-down version of eBay. There were categories listed on the left side. Most of them I won't repeat, but one caught my eye because it seemed so out of place. Personalized services, correspondence. I clicked it. It was a listing for something described as tailored written communication. The seller claimed he would write letters, actual physical letters, mailed to any address, in any voice you wanted. You gave him a name, a relationship, a context. He would write the letter as that person, a deceased parent, an old friend, an ex. The listing had reviews, dozens of them, all 5 stars. Comments like, exactly what I needed, and felt completely real. I don't know what I was thinking. I told myself it was curiosity, but the truth is I was lonely at 2 a.m., and the idea of getting a letter from someone who felt real, even artificially, had an appeal I'm embarrassed to admit. I messaged the seller. I gave him the name of my grandfather. He'd died 4 years earlier. We'd been close. I told the seller his name, a few details, that he was a retired mechanic, that he called me Kid, that he smelled like motor oil and peppermint. I paid the fee in crypto. It was maybe $40. I gave my address. 2 weeks later, the letter arrived. I stood in the kitchen and opened it. And I want to be precise about this, because the precision is what scared me. It was perfect. It wasn't just close. It used phrases my grandfather actually used. It mentioned my childhood dog by name, a name I had never included in the information I sent. It referenced a specific summer when I was 9 years old when we fixed a lawnmower engine together in his garage. It mentioned the smell of that garage. It was written in a slightly shaky hand, the way his handwriting had gotten toward the end. I put the letter down and stood very still. I went back to the listing. I messaged the seller again. I asked him how he knew those things. He replied within minutes. You'd be surprised what people leave online. I wrote back. The dog's name was never online. The garage memory was never online. I know that for a fact. There was a long pause. Then, you're right. Some of my clients appreciate a more thorough service. I do additional research when the project warrants it. I asked him what additional research meant. He said, it means I find out what I need to find out. I closed the browser. I sat in my kitchen for a long time. Then I did something that, in retrospect, was probably stupid. I started thinking about what research would actually require. The dog's name, the garage, things that weren't online. Things that only someone who knew me, or knew people who knew me, could possibly access. I called my mother the next morning. I asked her casually if she'd mentioned my grandfather to anyone lately, shown any old photos. She said no. I asked her if anyone had reached out to her recently, a researcher, a writer, anyone asking about the family. She said no, but then paused. She said, actually, a few months ago she'd gotten a Facebook message from someone who said they were compiling a neighborhood history of the town where my grandfather had lived. They'd asked a few questions. She'd answered them. She hadn't thought anything of it. I asked her what questions they'd asked. She listed them slowly. By the end, I had a tight feeling in my chest that hasn't fully gone away since. Every detail in that letter came from that conversation. Someone had reached out to my mother, months before I ever found that listing, and extracted the exact information needed to write me a letter I hadn't ordered yet. Which meant one of two things. Either this was a massive coincidence, or someone had been watching me long enough to anticipate what I would do. I never went back on tour after that. I moved apartments 6 months later. For unrelated reasons, I told myself. The letter is in a box somewhere. I haven't been able to throw it away. I still don't know which option scares me more. I used to moderate content for a living, not for a big platform, for a small company that contracted out to larger ones. The work was exactly what you'd expect. Flagging violent content, reviewing reported posts, escalating the serious stuff. You develop a thick skin fast, or you quit fast. I lasted 3 years, which probably says something about me I'm still working through. About 2 years into that job, we got a new contract. I won't say which platform. The briefing was unusual. We were told we'd be reviewing content pulled from a specific set of monitored onion addresses. Essentially, law enforcement had flagged these sites as of interest, and we were being brought in to help catalog and classify what was posted there. The team was 4 people. We were reminded several times about NDAs. The content was what you'd expect from that environment. Dark, disturbing. I had a system. You don't read closely, you classify quickly, you move on. That's the only way to survive it. For the first few weeks, it was routine in the way that terrible things can become routine. Then one night, it was late, I was doing overtime. I flagged a thread for escalation, and before I could move on, something in it caught my eye. I don't know why. Some instinct. It was a post in a forum thread, text only. The poster was describing, in a very calm and methodical way, the layout of an apartment, specific details, the location of the windows, the view of the street below, the time the occupant left for work each morning, the color of the welcome mat. And then I read the address. It was mine. I want you to understand that this was not a feeling of recognition like, oh, this sounds familiar. The street name was there, the building number, the apartment number, the description of my mat, which was dark green with a pattern on it I'd bought secondhand, was exact. I pushed back from my desk. The timestamp on the post was 4 days old. I had been going to work each morning at the times they described. I had not noticed anything unusual. No one following me, no one watching. But someone had been there, close enough and long enough to know when I left, what my mat looked like, which window was mine. I called my supervisor immediately. He escalated it. Within 48 hours I was told that the thread had been turned over to law enforcement, and that I should not discuss it further per my NDA. I was also told, and this was said carefully, in a way that implied it was meant to be reassuring, that monitoring of this nature is often performative, that people post information about others on these forums as a form of intimidation without actual intent to act. I asked how confident they were in that assessment. There was a pause before the answer came. The pause lasted about 3 seconds longer than it should have. I took a leave of absence the following week. I stayed with my sister across the state for a month. When I came back, I had a new welcome mat. I quit that job 8 months later. People who do that work will tell you the thing that gets you isn't any single piece of content. It's the accumulation. The slow understanding of how large and organized and patient certain kinds of evil can be. That forum post was 4 days old when I found it. 4 days. And whoever wrote it had clearly been watching long before that. I still think about the pause on the phone. 3 seconds. I've counted it out 100 times. It's not long, but it's long enough to mean something. The person I spoke to knew the answer before they said it. They just needed a moment to decide how much of the truth was safe to give me. I still don't know if I got the right amount. We like to think that if we stay on the safe part of the internet, nothing can reach us. No one watching from behind a screen. But the truth is, the dark parts of the web aren't just about what you see, they're about who sees you. If you've ever gone browsing in places you shouldn't have, ask yourself a question. Did you really leave? Or are you still on someone's screen, right now?